Well, today, Liz and I, we are going to be presenting our research that has been focusing on how we can transform the role of the concrete delivery professional, or the CDP. And also then, the project is continuously evolving, and we're performing new analyses. So today we're also going to be sharing our recommendations as well. So the NRMCA fully understands the severity of the problem and has been publishing studies for several years about the CDP shortage. And right now, the latest statistics from their 2021 survey, right now it's saying 28 out of every 100 CDPs that are hired are quitting during the year as a result of low pay and inconsistent scheduling. Producers are saying that the hiring pool is too small. And then they are, producers are turning away business because of this shortage. And, unfortunately, it does not look like, holding all things constant, this problem is not going to go away. Why? There's a couple, it's a sequence of events that has led us to this point. There's been this, just like manufacturing, where there's, battling this perception of being dull, dark, and dirty. Same thing has been happening in the trucking industry, where they were once regarded knights of the highway, and now they are no longer depicted in a positive light. There's this consumer behavior, the Burger King mentality, where we're ordering things from Amazon and we expect it to be on our doorstep, the next day. Then, of course, there was COVID, the closure of CDL schools, creating a bottleneck in the supply of those who have CDL licenses. And then, these producers, these small-time producers, are going up against the giants like Walmart and Amazon, who are able to pay more. And, and right now, the latest statistics are showing that this shortage is going to continue for the next decade. And so, even though that concrete is the world's second largest produced material, beyond what NRMCA is, what they have been publishing and studying, really little is known about the CDP shortage. And to test this, I went on to Google Scholar, typing in the keywords, ready mix concrete truck driver. And the first 10 results, none of them used any of those terms in the title. But when you type in long haul truck driver, that's a different story. And all of the titles that had, and all of the results, the title had, long haul truck driver. And then, of course, ChatGPT, I was curious to understand how many articles have been, that ChatGPT would return for, CDPs, and then the long haul drivers. And there were just a few for the CDPs. And then ChatGPT returned, 1,000, and between the period of 2017 and 2021. That's anecdotal, but the purpose is just to highlight that there's this gap, and our role and what we're trying to do is to fill that gap. And so, the question becomes, our research question becomes, and how we approach this was asking ourselves, how can technological and operational changes transform the role of the CDP? And so what's really neat about this and is that we performed a comprehensive analysis to build robust recommendations. We started by conducting interviews with folks in the industry and drivers. We created a unique survey that was deployed across the US that we asked CDPs to tell us about the things they like and dislike. We engaged with the MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics Freight Lab. We built a CDP replacement and retention simulator. We looked at productivity and analyzing deliveries where we can characterize the performance. and then taking all of that and then going out and talking to, having a workshop and folks in the industry and presenting this and beginning to think about what works and what doesn't and how we can implement these transformative solutions. So there were 3 buckets or categories that were created informing our methodology. And so, with recruitment, it was, how do we increase the candidate pool and changing the perception, looking at retention and reducing those first year challenges. How do we enhance career-long engagement? And then finally, looking at productivity, not only from the CDP's side of it, but then also the customer side of it as well. And so as you can see, when we deployed this survey in January, we had over 500 responses and across the US. And so what we did was, it was important to, find, our goal is to fix the things that are broken and enhance or amplify what's positive and good about this. And so there was, 2 unique pathways that could be taken when the CDP took the survey, and depending on the person's attitude towards the job. And so if the person loved their job, we wanted to know why. And if the person hated the job, then we wanted to present solutions and ask, if this happened, how much would your satisfaction increase? And so one of the questions was, select 5 things that contribute the most dissatisfaction to your job. And so what you see here to unpack this figure are the results from those who dislike their job. And so up at the top right corner, you can see this is the tenure in terms of how long the person has been a CDP at the company. And so there were 5 different categories, and just so for folks in the audience who might get hung up on the NA, what that means is that the person who answered this question did not tell us how long they've been at the company, but they still were able to tell us the things that they dislike the things that they dislike about their job. And so what we see here is at the very bottom, you see these 5 categories: the inconsistent scheduling, break times are inadequate, responsiveness of management, etc. But what we can do, though, is that we can begin to create 3 different categories. So there was issues with the CDP scheduling. There was concern over management, recognizing drivers' performance or the responsiveness of it, monitoring behavior. And then finally, there was the physical job requirements of the job itself that are contributing to the person's dissatisfaction. And so just to dig a little bit deeper into this, the next question or the follow-up question was then asking the person, well, how much would your satisfaction increase if you had more control over determining your daily start and stop times? And as you can see, and as you can see, a majority of the respondents are saying a lot or significantly. And it did not matter if whether or not the person had been there, less than 6 months or more than 10 years. So the next question, or in terms of things that we're identifying that needs to be addressed, and was asking all of the CDPs, in your opinion, what are the most challenging first-year CDP tasks? And again, you can see here, in terms of how their attitude towards how they like their job, that did not determine how they responded to the question. Everyone agreed that learning the properties of the concrete are challenging, dealing with contractors and placing concrete for more challenging pours, and driving off-road. These are things that first-year CDPs struggle with. And so the question is then we can begin to start to think of solutions that are addressing these challenges. Oops. So in terms of what, what is significant, or the takeaway, is that the responses from the CDPs are underscoring or highlighting where we need to prioritize efforts. And so, it's the scheduling and the management, and how do we make it easier for, to increase retention and make it easier for first year CDPs while they're learning the properties of concrete and driving off-road. And so when we start to think of questions, we want to and solutions, we need to understand, what is the value add. And so moving into the next part of our analysis, we built an MIT CS Hub CDP recruiter and retention simulator. And so the hub, what we did was, there were several inputs that went into the model in order to estimate the cost of, replacing or not hiring CDPs and retaining them at our MIT CS Hub mixer plant. So what I want to emphasize, these model inputs are based on what we put in. And so it's, when you're looking at the results, that's not what would be happening exactly at your plant, but we could insert those inputs. And so anyways, so I just wanted to clarify that. So, our model inputs, we were putting in the scale of the plant, how many trucks were on the plant, how many were idle, what was the hiring rate, and how, and the exit rate, and looking at CDP productivity, how many loads are being delivered by the CDPs per week. And so what we were modeling is the direct costs and the indirect costs. So, the direct costs being wages paid during training, the training costs, what the amount of money that HR is spending on hiring and hiring folks. And then also looking at the indirect costs, what is the revenue loss from, reduced CDP productivity, and the revenue loss from idle trucks. And so this is and just some important background information, because what you're seeing here is that one of the key variables that we had in our simulator was that we were distinguishing between the types of hires. We had 3 different types, but just to for the sake of time, and what I'm going to talk about are the 2 extremes examples. So there's 2 types of hires, and there's the person that you're hiring off the street. And our assumptions are, well, if it's going to take less time to find this person and less time to hire, but it's going to take more time to train, and it's going to take a longer period of time for this person to reach the same level of productivity as someone who has, a CDL and ready mix experience. So the other side of that would be that, finding that qualified CDP, that's going to take much longer. But there are gains because there's less time spent training, and the person is ramping up to, the productivity is ramping up faster. And so that's what we're trying to capture here. So, on the bottom, on the x-axis here, we have weeks, and then on the y-axis, the load per weeks. And so what we're demonstrating or showing you is exactly what I just described here, is that, the person with the CDL, it's taking, weeks to find this person, and the person quits. And then you're hiring another person, and the person's productivity ramps up very quickly. And then the opposite is true with the person who does not have a CDL or any ready mix experience. And that's why the slope of this productivity curve is lower. So what we did here are, so you see here on this figure, and what we learned is that, of course, and this is just validating things that I'm sure that you already know, but we are showing this and simulating this because in our interviews, we learned that, some of the smaller producers they just don't have that, are unable and do not have the bandwidth to perform these types of analyses. And so that's what inspired us to move forward with this also, and to look at this at a deeper level. But, you know, what we discovered, of course, is that, you know, the cost of hiring is notable, and you're going to, obviously, those direct costs, HR, advertising, testing, those things are going to, you know, those things are going to increase. And then, and the lost sales due to the person's inexperience. But the reduction in foregone sales dwarfs that. And so you know, what we wanted to do then is to compare hiring rates and looking at what happens. And so when you're expanding the recruitment pool to include those who do not have CDLs or ready mix experience. And so, you know, you can see when you're looking at this graph here on the bottom, you have, you know, the average hires per year. And on the right, you have the annual hiring costs. And if you're looking at the values here, so if you're at 17, if you're hiring 17 CDPs per year, and, you know, you're able to hire more, and you know, that's going to increase by, you know, approximately $30,000. But when you look at the foregone sales, the reduction in that is, those gains are significant. And so, you know, it's important to get those trucks moving. The other important analysis and how we expanded the modeling was to look at retention and what happens and what are the gains when you are retaining your CDPs. So the way that you interpret this graph is, so where you see this 0, that starting point is 6 months. And so anything that's before that, the company is losing revenue. But what happens is that once we start moving past that 6 months period, what's happening is of course that the CDPs, they're increasing productivity from the drivers, from driver experience. You're reducing idle trucks, and what we, you know, our results are showing that every additional week of average retention generates about $35,000 of value per year. And increasing new hire tenure by, you know, 2.5 months is providing the same value as if you were doubling the hiring rate. So, you know, the takeaway is that, you know, the retention and recruitment are equally important and important to address. And so finally, what we did was we wanted to look at the CDP's productivity analysis, of looking at a CDP's productivity and characterizing the performance of daily deliveries. And so, you know, the dominant issue when referencing the NRMCA's last study, you know, they're saying that the national vacancy rate is around 10%, and that firms need, you know, 10% more drivers than what they have. And so, you know, the implication is that they need to make these deliveries, but they do not have the manpower to meet this demand. And so what you see here is on the figure on the bottom, you have an average elapsed time in minutes. And at the top here, you're going to see the different categories or the things that are happening, that the tasks that occur in a delivery. There's the batching, and then after the batching, there's the waiting and washing the truck before it leaves the yard, driving the site, waiting to pour. And so, and let me just say this, that this analysis was based on roughly 36,000 deliveries and over a period of 2 years. And so some of the descriptive statistics, it takes on average about 120 minutes per delivery. And on average, a CDP is making, you know, 3.1 deliveries per day. And so, and there's about, you know, 30 minutes of idle time. And so what we're saying here is that a 12-minute decrease in idle time could potentially eliminate this 10% vacancy rate. So, these frictionless changes or ways to improve this would be, increasing the average deliveries from, 3.1 per day to 3.5, or shortening the delivery duration from 120 minutes to 108 minutes. And so now we've got all of these findings from the survey. We've got, we've done our homework, and we've done all of these analyses, and we're showing the value of addressing recruitment and retention. And so now we're beginning to formulate ideas and thinking about technology and how this, either technology that's existing and maybe not fully implemented in the ready mix industry, or technology that maybe is used in another industry but could be applied here. And so, at the workshop, the attendees, we, presented these different types of technologies in addition to the findings that I was discussing earlier, and getting them to think about some of the solutions and barriers that exist that would prevent implementation of these transformative technological and operational solutions. And, the takeaway from the workshop is that, everyone was able to quickly map or see the value of these solutions, but, operating in a tight market that's, influencing this decision making. And so, we heard several times that, more data showing the value of existing solutions is needed. And, there were other things, another theme was that these long-term solutions, that there's going to have to be a lot of collaboration amongst all of the players. And then, finally was, this perception of a limited career pathway, and how this impedes retention and recruitment rates. And right now, there isn't a system in place that addresses this concern. And so with these analyses, we're able to build, robust and meaningful recommendations, which Liz is going to share with you right now.
All right, are you all able to hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Beth, for kicking us off and sharing these methods and results. I'm definitely excited to be here today to share our team's recommendations based on these findings. The analysis that you've presented, or that Beth has presented, has shown us the value of recruitment, retention, and productivity. The survey and workshop provides us some of the clues on our best solutions here. And finally, our synthesis of those is leading us to recommendations. Next slide, please. As Beth explained at the beginning of the presentation, we've identified 3 major challenges facing the ready mix industry: recruitment, retention, and productivity. On the next few slides, I'll discuss some of these potential solutions for addressing these challenges that fall into these larger 6 categories shown in the boxes here. Next slide, please. We're going to start with recruitment. In order to recruit more CDPs, one of the first steps is increasing the candidate pool. We can focus on developing a standardized set of skills for the CDP to demonstrate that this position involves specialized and technical knowledge. This would first help us with recruiting foreign workers by fitting the criteria of a technical role that's really required for an H-1B visa. But this standardized skills list could also help us to develop modular curricula that would allow for some types of workers, such as other types of drivers like bus drivers or long-haul drivers, to be trained without going through full training. Finally, the skills list would also help us to identify the skills that are common with other roles, and we could then use those skills to target other groups that we could hire. Next, we could expand access to younger workers. I know many companies have often explained to us that they'd like to recruit more of that 18 to 21-year-old group. So some ways to do this are developing new roles, such as the concrete delivery technician position, or an internship program through partnership with the concrete construction community. For instance, a concrete delivery technician could learn about the properties of concrete and provide customer service while the CDP is responsible for driving. To recruit more women to the CDP role, we can learn from groups such as Women in Trucking on ways to improve the work-life balance, which we'll discuss a little bit on the retention slides. And we can identify opportunities that would reduce the physical burden of the job with automation and other types of technology. Reducing the physical nature of the job would also help with retaining the more senior CDPs for longer. Finally, we've learned from companies that developing a flexible part-time workforce has been successful, such as recruiting firefighters, teachers, and even airport bus drivers. We've also learned that there's other groups that we could tap into, such as veterans and those that have been previously incarcerated. In addition to broadening that talent pool, we have overall found that it would be helpful to change the perception of the job. We know the NRMCA has changed the position title to CDP instead of concrete mixer driver to help with this. However, this is a change that all companies could take to help promote the highly skilled nature of the job. Companies can change this in their job postings and in their general marketing for the position. To improve some of the job tasks that CDPs dislike the most, we could also look at other types of technology that can be adopted to help with more rote tasks, such as washing the trucks or maneuvering the chutes. Next slide, please. We've heard from many companies that retaining CDPs is an even greater challenge. Through our interviews and survey, we found that it's vital to reduce first-year challenges, since many drivers leave after a short period of time, typically less than a year. We believe it's important to continue to promote standardized, high-quality training. For example, the NRMCA has CDP training courses that can greatly benefit all RMC companies. To be most effective, though, we feel this training should emphasize training and tasks that first-year drivers find to be the most difficult, such as understanding concrete properties or placing the concrete to help them be more confident and effective earlier on in the job. We would also recommend improving the learning outcomes from this training by tapping into more hands-on training models like virtual reality systems. We have a star next to this one because this could be more of a long-term solution. So you'll see some stars throughout on different strategies that we're recommending. And that's the star basically indicates that it's a long-term solution. Virtual reality technologies can help simulate driving scenarios to improve safety, help drivers experience challenging driving and placement scenarios, and can also help drivers to learn about the properties of concrete in a more hands-on manner. We've also learned that gamification of learning outcomes is effective for many companies and can improve the intrinsic motivation of CDPs. To retain more CDPs, we can also enhance career-long engagement. The survey showed that CDPs would like to be more involved in scheduling, which would improve their job satisfaction. To do this, we've learned that schedule bidding systems that allow CDPs to have more autonomy in their schedule can be a strategy that we could try to deploy. Research has shown that schedule bidding is effective in other industries like ride sharing and even nursing. More flexible scheduling has also been shown to be helpful in retaining more senior employees for longer, helping to retain that institutional knowledge. We can also increase driver management engagement and strengthen driver recognition through automated data-driven CDP feedback, where CDPs are rewarded and given incentives based on performance, like using gamification technologies. Data can also be used to identify predictors of CDP stress to help aid in identifying those early on that are likely to quit, so that companies can intervene before it's too late. Last but not least, I'm sure when all of you have applied for jobs in the past, you've wanted to understand what the career pathway potential is for that job. This is important for CDPs too, especially younger workers. Helping to structure training to enable development for more concrete careers is critical in retaining workers that want to stay in the industry and move up the ladder, as many CDPs indicated in our survey. Next slide, please. While we know that technology and data can help with recruitment and retainment, we've also learned that data can be helpful in improving CDP productivity. Data analysis can help us inform ways to reduce non-value add time, such as washing or driving back from the customer, really any time that's outside of the actual delivery. One strategy to help with this is to use augmented reality technology to improve efficiencies for CDPs by allowing them to practice different scenarios and get some real-time feedback. Automation and robot assist technology can also help reduce the time it takes to perform some of these more rote tasks like washing, and that'll improve the overall efficiency of the operation. Evaluation of data can also help to manage customer demand and shape the demand curve. We can use data to develop machine learning models that predict customer demand and CDP supply based on patterns over time. Then, surge pricing could be applied, such as the surge pricing that's used in ride-sharing apps like Uber. Higher prices could be charged for more unfavorable shift times, like early mornings, holidays, or weekends, to incentivize drivers to take these shifts. Paired with the bidding app, this could allow for CDPs to choose shifts based on their time and wage preferences. Next slide, please. Today, we've discussed some short and long-term solutions based on our findings from interviews, literature review, the nationwide survey, and simulation models. We do believe there are opportunities for additional research and outreach in this area to improve the CDP shortage. First, while we've proposed some new solutions like a bidding app, it would be useful to develop a proof of concept model to assess how this app would perform in a ready-mix company setting. We also believe case study analysis and dissemination of those case studies across the industry could help demonstrate the effectiveness of emerging technologies like VR and AR and gamification. One of the biggest gaps that has made assessing this challenge more difficult is the lack of data on CDPs. Unlike other jobs that have years of data collection in the Bureau of Labor Statistics databases, data on CDPs are much more scarce. We therefore think it could be really useful to develop a CDP data hub that would allow us to investigate this and perform more in-depth analysis. Beth presented on a simulation model of a CDP operation that helped us to understand the value investing in several possible solutions that were presented today. But all of these strategies require investments or changes to operation. This type of model allows us to understand the value of making these changes. We believe further development of that model could allow for the creation of a common platform to test the effects of new strategies on cost and productivities for operations of different sizes and locations. Understanding the value of these solutions is really important for the industry, and it will require the industry to work together. We'd be happy to continue to support this type of effort and work with all of you on an analysis to understand the true value of these solutions. We're also doing our best to raise the awareness of the CDP shortage and the benefits of this skilled occupation through engaging with media outlets and working on op-eds with our communications director, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. Last but not least, we think it would be helpful to keep this momentum moving forward from this research and engagement with industry that we've had so far by increasing the opportunities for CDP workforce communications. We thoroughly enjoyed hosting the workshop at MIT this past spring and would love to continue to host an annual innovation meeting to provide updates on workforce research and invite leading experts and industry speakers to share insights and emerging solutions. We also believe it would be helpful to develop a webinar series of experts and industry leaders to share potential strategies and keep this conversation moving forward. Despite the CDP workforce challenges facing the industry, we believe the short and long-term strategies discussed today can aid in recruiting more talent to the industry, retaining the current skilled CDPs, and can help improve the productivity and efficiency of your operations. We appreciate your time and look forward to any questions or thoughts that you have to share. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Liz and Beth, for that great review. We have a few questions that have come through, and also just as a reminder to folks that are on the webinar, if you have any questions, there is a Q&A function that you can send those questions on through. First thing I wanted to ask is, so there's a number of recommendations that we kind of walk through, things about retention, things about recruitment, ones about productivity. What do you think would, if there was one that you think would be the most urgent or most impactful to pursue first? Do you have any thoughts on what the industry should be going after first on that list?
Liz, do you want me to take this?
Sure, you can go first, and I'm happy to answer
Yeah.
too if I have a different answer.
Yeah. So when thank you, Randy. So when I'm approaching this question, I'm approaching it thinking about a time frame and what could possibly be accomplished today, and what would have the greatest impact. And when I think about that, or like this, low-hanging fruit, from my perspective, I think that building a standardized skill list is a great place to begin. And the reason why I say that is because that's going to be helping with recruitment, because, like what Liz was saying, is that it helps expedite this visa process. It's beginning to tackle this issue, or laying the foundation for career pathways, and thinking about these skills and how they exist in other occupations or competencies. So the skills list, and then I think focusing on the proof of concept bid for schedule app, that has been, the inconsistent scheduling has been a persistent problem, and nobody has been able to figure that out. There's strategies and things that have been implemented, but not a scheduling app for the ready mix industry. So I think that it would be beneficial for the stakeholders to see how this works, and it would help then when building that, the scheduling app for the industry. So those are building the skills list, and the proof of concept bid for scheduling simulation.
Excellent.
Are my suggestions.
Liz, did you have any thoughts on that question?
I definitely completely agree. I think, focusing on two of those two would really be helpful in terms of recruitment and retainment. I think something else that we've learned over time is how beneficial technology can be, especially in this industry. And I think one thing that we've seen that might be lacking is some demonstrated case studies that really show how well some of these technologies are working at companies. And having these case studies could help us to disseminate the results for different companies across the industry, and be just a starting place for an investment in these technologies. We know that in a lot of these changes are going to require maybe a substantial investment. And so to ensure that investment is worth it, I think having a case study and documentation that shows that how helpful it is, it would be really, really useful for us.
Excellent. One of the questions that came through is, could you expand on the idea about the automated CDP feedback? So I think, Liz, you were the one that mentioned that the use of automated information to enhance engagement with management.
Absolutely. So I know we've seen and learned from other industries that there are ways that you could set up, emails or messages, for example, from management, that when when you're collecting data and maybe this is going to be a silly example, but maybe your employee logs in on time, and that's been a real big struggle for all of you. Getting that notification that they've logged in on time, rather than your member having to, or rather than the management having to worry about whether or not they would just remember to give a pat on the back for this type of effort. We could use automation to send through a message of some kind, either an email or a message that just says, hey, great job signing in on time today. And of course, this could be for any different types of tasks that they do well, but really just providing that instant feedback to them that they're doing a great job. I know we've seen that workers that feel supported, they tend to be a lot more productive. So something as simple as setting up a system like that would be really helpful. And one way to do this is through gamification. We know there's some gamification apps out there that we've seen work really well in this industry, as well as others, that whenever a person does something really well, there's ways to give them points or ways to give them a thumbs up. This could be really, really transformative for ensuring that CDPs feel that they are valued. So I think that that's something that a lot of the companies should look into, and could be a relatively low lift to try and implement.
Yeah, if I could maybe just expand a little bit on what Liz was saying. One of the things that we heard at the workshop was that, people have obviously good managers have known for a long time that they need to engage and give feedback to their employees, but all of those same managers are also tapped out in terms of their own timing, their own time. And so it often gets overlooked. So this idea of automating that could solve both problems. Another question that we had is, to what extent does seasonality, particularly in northern climates, affect retention? Did we run into any information on that?
Just, that we addressed that topic in the interviews, and that, what we discovered in talking to the producers, that is challenging. And some of it's challenging because of the inconsistent schedule. And so that really affects retention and folks leaving because things are expensive. And so those we I think I'm trying to recall one producer, a strategy that he put in place to address that problem specifically. And it was a voluntary basis, and letting people decide if whether or not they wanted to work or not. This was in Minnesota. That's right. Now it's coming back to me. Sorry, Randy. Anyways, but this was a producer in Minnesota, and he was saying that a strategy that he's put in place to deal with this, and to give the new CDPs an opportunity to earn income, was that, when the winter months roll around, what he does is it's a voluntary basis where the person can decide if whether or not they want to work or not. And so a lot of just because of it being Minnesota and it's wintertime, and the physical, how physically demanding the job is, a lot of the older CDPs elected to, head down to Florida. So, but in terms of analyzing the data, no, we have not looked at seasonality yet.
And the other part of that question was, what role does seniority play in sort of the way that CDPs are scheduled, or what's the general impact on their work life?
Yeah. So what was interesting about that question about seniority, and as you are climbing the ladder there, and the benefit of staying longer is more income and maybe, you know, having a little bit more of an idea of what's happening with your schedule. But one of the interesting questions that we asked in the survey was, we asked CDPs, you know, if they would like to stick with, you know, using seniority as part of, you know, a way to handle scheduling. And what was really interesting about that is that it was mixed, that you know, those, of course, those who have not been at the company for a long time. So remember at the beginning of the presentation where I was showing you the tenure, you know, less than 6 months and whatnot, you know, those who had been at the company for a couple of years, they wanted to eliminate seniority and have that not part of how the schedules are created. But there was also those who had been, it was about 50-50 of those who said, like, yes, let's get rid of it. There were and then there were those who've been CDPs for a long time, and they agreed that it was time to get rid of seniority and not have that part of creating schedules. So that's what we learned from you know, from the survey about that subject.
I think it was also really interesting that some of the issues for the newer drivers, like knowing a little bit more about the properties of concrete, working with contractors, challenging placements, those are all the things that the senior drivers actually like the most. And so I think what we've really learned here is that the real challenge is helping people through that transition, that the importance of improving training and intensively supporting new drivers is really apparent here.
Excellent. And we have time probably for one last question. So I'm going to ask you guys if there was one other piece of information or, you know, knowledge that we could have about the drivers or about that way that operations work, you know, what would be the most valuable thing that we weren't able to learn that would sort of help us to answer these questions? Any thoughts on that?
Something that was you know, something that was missing that we would like to learn more about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, just coming back to our simulator that we really enjoyed building and you know, inserting the inputs. You know, one of the things that we just had limited data on was safety issues. And you know, what's happening with the CDPs and in the first year in terms of, you know, the types of accidents that are happening and under which conditions. So, you know, if my wish list would be having access to some more data about safety or accidents and whatnot for first year CDPs.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's yeah, we heard that was a critical issue, but there wasn't really detailed data on it.
Correct.
As I understand. Yeah.
Yep.
Liz, any
For
thoughts
me, I think that having some additional data about why these drivers are leaving, so really maybe tracking the impact of driver experience on productivity would be really helpful to understand what directly led drivers to quitting. That would help us to build out some additional models that would show those predictors of who's most likely to quit. And I think just one other kind of piece that's relevant to this quitting is, I know we heard from some companies that the companies perform exit interviews while others don't. And I know it can be difficult sometimes to reach out to drivers that have left. They don't necessarily answer, but if there was some sort of survey that could be deployed that would help to just collect information during an exit interview process, I think that would be really beneficial in helping us to understand further why these drivers are leaving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, there was one last question that did sneak in here. I think this is going to be added to our wish list of data rather than that we're going to have a good answer for it. But the question was, did we find out whether there's any correlation with job satisfaction and whether the trucks they were using were front or rear discharge?
No, we did not. We did not see any correlation there, but what we do know, and you know, a lot of these things we all know, but you know what the takeaway is that, you know, this validates what we knew is that, you know, CDPs, they prioritize comfort over the truck's performance. And so any, you know, in terms of, you know, again, some low hanging fruit, if there's, you know, I know that the trucks are expensive, but if there are ways to make the truck more comfortable for the CDP, that's going to pay off, you know. And another, you know, another hurdle I think that I observed, or, you know, in this is that, you know, the first year CDPs, there's this, you know, this rite of passage where they're, you know, they're typically given the, you know, the truck that might be manual or an older truck. And so it's you know, it could be very uncomfortable. And then, you know, they're climbing this steep learning curve of, you know, learning the properties of concrete and you know, putting myself into their shoes, I can understand that, you know, what's happening and that where that level of frustration is coming from. So, you know, in terms of whether or not it's, you know, a back end loader, that we did not see any correlation. It's just focusing on the comfort of the truck is important, and making sure that, you know, they're rested, and, you know, brake times are a little bit more, you know, that brake times are adequate. And so there's some things that can be done today for sure.
Understood. All right. Well, thank you, both Beth and Liz. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I think Andrew might have a couple of logistical comments, but I just want to, again, thank everyone for joining us and look forward to seeing you at future webinars.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. So thanks again to our presenters. Thanks to all of you who could join us. Thanks for taking time out of your day. I just want to note that slides from this and the recording will be distributed as soon as I can process it. So we're looking at Friday for both of those. So I appreciate it, and take care. Thanks.
Thank you.